Hi everyone. This is chapter 13, vitamins and minerals. Um, so I will say this chapter is a 1 week chapter. You're reading this whole chapter, and the lecture for it is all just in 1 week. So it is a lot of material. There's a little bit at the end and some other small sections that I'm cutting out, and I'll note that in this lecture. There's some other things that I've condensed. Pretty much if I don't talk about it at all in this lecture, then you don't need to know it. Um, that being said, if I do talk about a subject, make sure you've read that part of the book, because you might catch something in the book that I don't go into as much detail on, that could possibly be tested over. I will also say um, the exam questions from this chapter will only be multiple choice and true false. There's not going to be any explain this type of questions, list this type of questions. I'll also be pointing out some things that are important for you to know, and I would highly suggest that you take note of those and highlight those. And as we go, I'll kind of make some notes of what you should be paying attention to try to help you a little bit for studying for this exam, since it is a lot of material, because there's a lot of vitamins and minerals that are important to human nutrition. Okay, so let's get into it. Um, so what are vitamins? Important definition here. Organic compounds. So that's the key thing with vitamins, is that they are organic compounds. Um, that are needed in small amounts in the diet to help regulate body processes. Um, Usually they are working as components in enzyme systems, and that is how our bodies are using them. Um, and so they work to facilitate reactions. Um, some vitamins, we know them mostly as their letter name, like vitamin A, vitamin D, but there are other vitamins that are known mostly by their scientific name. So, example, vitamin D, the scientific name for vitamin D is calciferol, but we know it commonly as vitamin D. And when it's listed on a food label, it's listed as vitamin D, and it might say calciferol in parentheses next to it, but um, it's commonly just vitamin D. Whereas vitamin B9 is known as folate. And when you see it listed on a nutrition statement, it is listed as folate and not vitamin B9. And again, sometimes you'll see the vitamin B9 in parentheses to clarify, but folate is its common name that we refer to it by. So one thing that is going to be really important, there are going to be a lot of test questions over this, is knowing the categories of vitamins and minerals. There are two categories of vitamins. They're the fat soluble and the water soluble vitamins, and you need to know which vitamins are in each category. Okay, so the fat soluble vitamins are vitamins A, D, E, and K. Um, I'll tell you how I have always remembered it, and it's not like anything really that special. But when I'm remembering these are the fat soluble, I actually spell it K-A-D-E, and it spells something that looks more like a word. And that's how I remember in my head. Cade equals fat soluble. So if that helps you, great. Um, so the Let me get back to the laser pointer. Um, so fat soluble vitamins means that they're soluble in fat, and so they're going to be found in the fats and oils that are in the foods that you eat. So often you'll find them in fatty foods. Not always, but often they're in the fatty foods. Um, in order for digestion of these vitamins to occur, bile from the liver is used to get these vitamins into your body. And the key thing to know about fat soluble vitamins is they're not easily excreted. They're able to be stored in your fat. And so you can you don't have to consume them every day. If you consume a really good amount one day, you can go several days without consuming it, as long as you have that surplus stored in your fat. Now, the caveat to that is because your fat is storing it, it can build up. These are more likely to build up to poisonous levels if you are consuming too much of them. So you do have to be a little bit careful not to consume too much of these vitamins, because that can be harmful. But on the reverse side, you can consume them kind of like in little binges, to get a surplus stored up in your body and go several days without having them. So just going through these fat-soluble vitamins one at a time. So vitamin A is the vision vitamin, specifically night vision vitamin. Retinol is used by the retina for night vision. Retinol, and so retinol is another name for vitamin A. It is also important for making your skin and organ linings. It's important for the immune system, production of hormones, and bone development. But the vision one is the one that you most often hear about. So where we find vitamin A, the active form, retinol, which is actual vitamin A, is found pretty much only in animal sources. Okay. And it's going to be found highest amount in the liver. You can see this little diagram, very high in liver. It can also be found in butter, cheese, cream, and egg yolks. So retinol is one of the reasons egg yolks are yellow-orange in color. Okay, beta carotene is a precursor to vitamin A. So we can consume beta carotene, and our body can turn it into vitamin A. And so that means it's a precursor. However, it's not a one-to-one transition. You need about 3 times as much beta carotene in order for your body to produce the same amount of retinol. So you have to consume quite a bit more if you are not consuming actual retinol vitamin A from animal sources. And beta carotene is going to be found in foods that have an orange color to them, primarily, or this is one of the ways that you can tell. So apricots, cantaloupe, carrots, sweet potatoes, those things all have beta carotene in them. Beta carotene is also found in leafy greens, and the reason these aren't orange is because they also have a high amounts of chlorophyll, so that green color overpowers the orange color of the beta carotene. But leafy greens, so both cruciferous, so like a broccoli type vegetables, and more leafy greens like spinach, have higher amounts of vitamin A versus other foods. Now, if you look at this, still not even close to the amount of the sweet potato or liver pate. For most of these, as far as like the food sources, if I'm telling you the food source is really high in this, that is probably the main food source that you need to know. Rather, you don't need to memorize like this whole list of food sources that I'm giving you. Okay, so vitamin D, which is also known as calciferol, its biggest function is going to be for bone formation. And also for these functions, probably the one that you should memorize, if any of them, is just the one that usually the one that I list first, and I say biggest function. So highlight those in your notes. Also important for blood vessel health, absorption of calcium and phosphorus, which goes along with bone formation, because calcium, phosphorus, and vitamin D all work in tandem for regulation of bone. And I will also say, just in general, vitamin D is just really important for the human body. There are studies that show that vitamin D deficiency um, could possibly be a cause of some cancer. At minimum, it doesn't help cancers, and having good vitamin D can prevent. Also, cognitive function. A lot of people are vitamin D deficient. Probably over half of Americans are vitamin D deficient, and it causes a whole host of issues, including depression and insomnia, and I mean, all kinds of things that are funky going on with your body. And so vitamin D is probably one of those important vitamins to keep an eye on for your own health, to make sure you're getting enough of it. Okay. So vitamin D is kind of special because your body can make all the vitamin D it needs by itself, as long as you have sunlight exposure. And so it's unique in that way. And this is important to know that your body can make all that you need. Now the caveat is you have to have enough sunlight exposure, and this is why most Americans are vitamin D deficient, is that people work inside. They're inside a lot more than they used to be. And some doctors I've heard say that pretty much anybody north of Florida should be supplementing vitamin D, because they're likely not getting enough sunlight exposure unless you have a job where you work outside and are outside a lot. Um, the use of sunscreen over the past, however many years since sunscreen has been introduced, has also caused part of the problem with vitamin D, because when people are out in the sun, a lot of people use sunscreen, and that prevents the UV exposure that is needed for vitamin D production by your skin. So how that works is cholesterol in your skin is converted to cholecalciferol, which is vitamin D, and then converted to pure vitamin D, calciferol, by your liver and kidneys. Now you can also get vitamin D from some animal sources, egg yolks, liver, sardines. You're going to see liver a lot in these lists, and that's because organ meats are a really, really good source of all, like quite a few of your vitamins and minerals. And it's too bad we don't really eat organ meats anymore, as Americans in general. You can also find vitamin D in fortified milk, orange juice, and cereals. Vitamin D is not naturally found in these things, but is often added to them, because of the recognition that many Americans are deficient in it. It's added to help boost people's vitamin D. The vitamin E is also known as tocopherol, and I thought I'll make sure you know. I think it's on the water soluble. All of the fat soluble vitamins are just known by their vitamin letter as their main name. When we get to the water soluble, I'll make sure to point out which one is the main name that you should know. Okay, so vitamin E is tocopherol. Its biggest function is antioxidants. And everything else that I'm about to list is like a sub-function of that. It does this because it is an antioxidant. So it protects vitamin A because vitamin E is an antioxidant. It stabilizes cell membranes because it is an antioxidant, and it keeps oxidation from occurring on those lipids in the cell membrane. It regulates oxidation reactions because it is an antioxidant. So vitamin E, antioxidant functions, know that. So where do we find vitamin E? It's going to be found in plant-based oils, in nuts, in seeds, some fruits and vegetables. as well. So as far as the oils, it's not high in every oil. So these are the oils that it's highest in. So grapeseed, olive, sunflower, safflower. It's highest in these nuts, particularly almonds, have quite a bit of vitamin E. So a little handful of almonds gets you 64% of your daily value. Fruits, not high in every fruit, but avocado, it's high in, as well as some of these others. And then it's also found in some leafy greens, such as Swiss chard, spinach, collard greens. Okay, so vitamin K, its scientific name is phyloquinone, and it's important for blood clotting. And that's its biggest function of vitamin K. When infants are born, one of the things that the hospital wants to give them as soon as they're born is a shot of vitamin K, and that's because a lot of times newborns are deficient in that when they're first born, and so giving them that shot of vitamin K helps with blood clotting in case anything happens early in their first few days of life. So like for little boys, like circumcision, they want to give them vitamin K so that there's no danger of their blood not clotting when they have that small surgery. Okay. Also, it's used in bone development, but blood clotting is the big one on vitamin K. So vitamin K, it's not produced by our bodies, but our bodies, the bacteria in our bodies can produce about half of what we need. So as gut health and probiotics are really important for vitamin K because as long as we keep those bacteria healthy in our gut, they can produce most of our vitamin K needs. But to fulfill the other needs, other sources of vitamin K are leafy greens and other vegetables. So that includes Brussels sprouts, soybeans, asparagus, spinach, kale, turnip greens. And then animal sources of vitamin K include liver, again, meat, milk, and egg yolks. Okay, so now our water-soluble vitamins. So the water-soluble vitamins just include the B and C vitamins. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but there are a lot of B vitamins. So the key thing with water-soluble vitamins is that they cannot be stored by the body. And so anything that is excess at the time that it enters your bloodstream is then going to be excreted in the urine. And so that's why if you take a multivitamin, usually one of the first times you urinate after you've taken that vitamin, the urine is bright in color. And that's because all of those excess vitamins that your body couldn't use are excreted out in the urine. It is generally not possible to receive toxic doses of any of the water-soluble vitamins from food because you just can't consume enough for it to be toxic before it is excreted by your body. However, I will say that if you supplement with these vitamins, you can get to a point where it's toxic. If you take too much at one time, it can be toxic to the body. Okay, so the B vitamins, there are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 important B vitamins. Okay, so when I say B and C, it's not quite that simple. There's 8 different B ones for you to know. The B vitamins, they act as coenzymes in reactions throughout the body. And each B vitamin, even though they're all labeled B, they have their own special function and they're found in different places as far as food sources. Okay, so the first one is vitamin B1. I'm going to be highlighting or bolding these titles of the vitamins what it's mostly known by. Okay, so thiamine is the first B vitamin, and its role is helping with the normal functioning of nerves and the muscles they control. This B vitamin is found in animal sources, and pretty much all of our B vitamins are found in animal sources. Animal meat is a great source of all your B vitamins. But it's also found in nuts, whole grains, legumes. And that's it. Now, all these lists, there might be some things that some other foods that they are also found in. For example, this list here has acorn squash, but this is the primary sources. Okay, riboflavin is vitamin B2, and it is known primarily by riboflavin. Okay, and its main function is promoting healthy skin and eyesight, and it's going to be found in liver, meat, milk, eggs as its main animal sources, and also leafy vegetables, whole grains, and nuts. Okay, and also legumes. Okay, niacin is the main name for vitamin B3, and it keeps the skin and nervous system healthy and promotes digestion. Okay, so the animal sources for that, eggs, fish, meat, and milk. So probably notice a trend that most of these B vitamins, it's like, okay, eggs, fish, meat, milk, right? Um, and um, and so this is one of the reasons I'm not asking you to memorize like every single thing in these lists, okay? So nuts, whole grains, okay, are the sources of these. Avocado has a little bit too. So, okay, vitamin B5, it is primarily known by pantothenic acid. Okay, and it promotes growth, cell growth, and helps synthesize several vital substances. And I don't even have a food list in this because it's pretty widespread in food and deficiency is rare. So it's not one that we usually worry about. Okay, vitamin B6 is known mainly by vitamin B6. Its scientific name is pyridoxine, but it's known by vitamin B6 as commonly. Okay, it converts tryptophan to niacin and promotes healthy immune and nervous systems, and it helps make hemoglobin in our blood. Okay, and so like the other B vitamins, animal sources is going to be where it is most abundant, but it's also found in fruits, leafy greens, and seeds. Okay, vitamin B7 is primarily known by biotin. Okay, it helps the body make fats as well as glycogen. So it's a coenzyme used in producing those substances. And it's pretty widespread in food, but highest in animal sources, of course. Egg yolks and organ meat. Most of the time when we say something is high in eggs, it's going to be high in the egg yolks. Egg yolks are the most nutritious part of the egg. The egg whites have lots of protein and not a whole lot besides that. Okay, but also higher in nuts, seeds, mushrooms, avocados, and sweet potatoes. Okay, vitamin B9 is primarily known as folate. Okay, it helps cells to divide, which means it's really important in the first development of an embryo turning into a baby in the womb. Okay, and specifically, they've found that it's really important in preventing neural tube damage in developing embryos. So what the neural tube is when this embryo is like hardly recognizable as a human yet, all of the organs are starting to differentiate. So you have this massive cells, but the cells have a specific design. And they know from the beginning that they're going to differentiate into different parts. And so as that's happening, you have some cells that are destined to become muscle cells. There's some cells that are destined to become the skin cells. There's some cells that are destined to become the neural cells. And the neural tube is includes the brain as well as the spinal column. Okay. And so if the mother doesn't have enough folate, then this does not happen correctly. And so you can have defects in the brain and spinal column due to a deficiency in the folate. So this one's really important for pregnant women, and actually any woman who is of pregnancy age and plans to become pregnant. Before you even start trying to become pregnant, you should make sure that you have plenty of folate in your body, because the timing that this is happening, a lot of women don't even know that they're pregnant yet. And so, make sure that you have that. So girls, just heads up on that for the future. Okay. So it is found, like the other B vitamins, high in animal sources. It's high in liver. It is also high in some legumes. So like kidney beans have even more than liver. It's pretty rare for a plant source to have more of something than liver, because liver is so high in so many vitamins. But kidney beans and lentils are high in folate. Okay, and then the last B vitamin is vitamin B12, and I didn't highlight it, but vitamin B12 is what it is primarily known as. So that should be bold. And cobalamin is its scientific name. It helps folate function and promotes the health of nerve tissue and red blood cell formation. It is pretty much only found in animal sources. So vegetarians have to find other ways to get this. I think vegetarian sources, they can get it from yeast. And like actually consuming like large amounts of yeast. And other than that, I think they can only get it from like fortified foods and just supplementing with pills of vitamin B12. But so animal sources is where it's found. Meat, milk, eggs, fish, and shellfish. Okay, so that's all the B vitamins, and here's vitamin C, which is also known as ascorbic acid. Its biggest function is that it is important for collagen synthesis. So know that. Okay. It also functions as an antioxidant. So this is also kind of a big secondary function. I guess both of these are the two biggest functions: collagen synthesis and antioxidant functions. Now you probably know vitamin C as this, right? Resistance to infection. Like you start getting a cold and mom tells you drink some orange juice or take some vitamin C tablets. And that is another valid function of vitamin C, is helping the immune system. It also helps with iron absorption. So if you are eating food that is high in iron, and we'll get to this in a minute, that is not absorbed by your body, if you include some vitamin C in there, it can help that iron be absorbed better by your body. And then it's also important for amino acid metabolism. So sources of vitamin C include fresh fruits, which is probably what you think of the most, right? Specifically citrus, but cantaloupe, strawberries, tomatoes, peppers, uh, as well as fresh vegetables, such as cabbage or broccoli or Brussels sprouts. Okay, so a couple important non-vitamins. So they are organic, but they're just not classified as vitamins. Choline, it probably should be classified as a vitamin. It is so important. But it's important for regulation of memory, mood, muscle control, and other nervous system functions, and formation of cell membranes. And it's found in, animal sources, so meat, egg yolks, fish, and dairy, potatoes, and cruciferous vegetables. So cruciferous vegetables include broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and beans, nuts, seeds, and whole grains. Choline is another one that a lot of Americans are deficient in. And it's not really publicized that we are. And one of the main reasons that we're deficient in it is because we used to eat lots of eggs, and now for a lot of people, that has really dropped off. Mostly because of the 90s when eggs were demonized. All of Americans started eating less eggs, and now it's not really part of many Americans' diets anymore. Another important non-vitamin is coenzyme Q10, and it's just involved in a lot of enzyme metabolic reactions in the body. And I won't go into that one any further. Okay, so now let's get into the minerals. Okay. Minerals have a simple chemical structure. They are elements. So it is just one element, right? They are not organic. It's just one, often a metal, not always, but one element. Okay. The major minerals, and so these are the two classifications that you need to know on the mineral side. On the vitamin side, it was water soluble and fat soluble, and which ones are under each of those. For the minerals, know the major minerals and the trace minerals, and which minerals fall under each of them. So figure out a mnemonic and memorize these. So the major minerals, for it to be classified as a major mineral, it means that is needed in amounts of 100 milligrams or more each day. And it includes these. I'm not going to just list because you can read that. And then the trace minerals are needed in amounts less than 100 milligrams per day, and includes this list. Okay. And I'm not going to even go over all the trace minerals in this slide set, nor will I expect you to know anything more about them other than that they are part of the list of trace minerals if I don't go over them in this lecture. Okay, so first major mineral is calcium. 99% of the calcium in our body is found in our bones and teeth, so important for bones. The remaining 1% does a lot. It regulates movement of ions across cell membranes. It's important sending messages along nerve fibers. It helps maintain blood pressure. It's important, actually, like essential for muscle contraction and relaxation. Without calcium, your muscles cannot relax at all. And so you cannot move your muscles without calcium. And it is a catalyst in blood clotting. It is found in, of course, we all know about dairy, but from non-dairy sources, canned fish is one, and that's just because that it has bones in it. So specifically, like sardines, right? It's like a whole fish. There are edible bones in there, and so it's high in calcium because it has bones. And then plant sources. It's biggest in cruciferous, so like broccoli and leafy green vegetables. It is also fortified in things like orange juice a lot of times, and so you can get some calcium from that if calcium has been added to it. So phosphorus is our third bone thing in this vitamins and minerals chapter. So vitamin D, calcium, phosphorus, essential for bone. So phosphorus is also found mostly in bone, but the rest in our body works as a salt buffer in the body's acid-base balance. So phosphate has phosphorus in it, and it's a really good buffer of our body, and it keeps our pH what it should be in the body. It is also part of DNA. It works with lipids to form cell membranes, so those phospholipids, right? Phosphorus is part of that, and it regulates many enzymes. Phosphorus is found in most foods, so we're not going to worry about where you get it. So sodium, potassium, and chloride, I am grouping them all together because they form essentially the same function altogether. They maintain the positive and negative ions, they are the main positive and negative ions that maintain the fluid balance in the body. And so you could see here, this is just a little diagram, is basically showing that like it maintains osmotic pressure, keeping fluid where it should be in the body. So deficiencies in these cause muscle cramps, nausea, vomiting, death. So, so like if you're having muscle cramps, like drink something with sodium or potassium in it, chloride, and it can help with that. It's found in these are all found in most foods, and so deficiency is usually not an issue. How you get the muscle cramps is because you're dehydrated and you sweated a lot of them out. Okay. Magnesium. Magnesium is involved in hundreds of enzymatic reactions all over the body. It's necessary for vitamin D, potassium, and calcium use by the body. It's necessary for muscle contractions as well, in addition to calcium. And the book says that magnesium, you don't really have to worry about it. Most people aren't deficient in it. Maybe that was before they knew better. But no, it is actually deficient in half of all Americans. There's a 2020 study that showed that, and I think there's been others since then, but that was one that I just quickly found when I Googled it because I was like, I don't think that's right. So yeah, and it's mostly because Americans consume way more processed foods than used to be, and so if you're eating a whole foods based diet, you're not going to be as deficient, not be likely to be as deficient in magnesium, but about half of all Americans are deficient in magnesium, and one thing that I've heard too is that like if you are supplementing it vitamin D, you should be supplementing magnesium as well, because in order for the vitamin D to be used by the body, that you have to make sure that you have enough magnesium in your body also. So take that for what it's worth. So magnesium is found in legumes. And by legumes, if you haven't, I don't know for sure whether I've spoken this out loud, but legumes are beans. Okay. Peanuts also fall under legumes because they're not a true nut like a lot of the other nuts. Okay. So found in legumes, whole grains, dairy, and dark green vegetables. It's also high in chocolate. So. Okay, sulfur helps maintain acid-base balance. It helps our liver neutralize toxins. And it's basically found in any protein-rich food. So as long as you're getting enough protein, you're getting enough sulfur. And why it's found in protein-rich foods is these two amino acids that we've talked about before that have sulfur as part of their side chains, methionine and cysteine. Okay. Iron. So I missed the part where I should be telling you where the trace minerals start. Hold on. So iron is where we are starting with trace minerals. Everything up through sulfur was our major minerals. Okay, and iron is from this point forward, we're on the trace minerals. Okay. So iron is an important component of red blood cells and muscle. We've talked about this before, okay? Both hemoglobin, which is in our blood, the red part of our blood, and myoglobin, which is the red part in our muscle, or what makes our muscles red, I should say, have a heme group. And the heme group in the center of it, you probably can't see it on your screen because it's so tiny, but there's iron there, Fe, iron. And that iron binds oxygen. And so with hemoglobin, that iron carries the oxygen to other parts of the body and releases it where it needs to go, and then comes back to the lungs and gets more oxygen and part pumps it through. Okay, with myoglobin, that heme iron, that heme iron grabs the oxygen that has just been delivered from the blood and gives it to the muscle and distributes it within the muscle. Okay, so iron then is, of course, important for oxygen to be available throughout the body for energy metabolism. It is common for young women, especially, to be deficient in this due to the fact that we lose a lot of blood every month. And so it's something that you need to just make sure that you are consuming enough iron so that you do not become anemic and have issues with this. Okay, iron can be found in, of course, meat, fish, poultry, organ meats. Okay, and in these sources, this is called heme iron. That means this iron is coming from the myoglobin. Okay, the heme group within the myoglobin. Not really usually getting it from hemoglobin because you're not consuming blood when you are consuming meat. You're consuming the myoglobin that's in the muscle. And this iron is the most digestible. Our body takes it and we can immediately use it and process it. Okay. Iron can also be found in legumes, dark leafy greens, dried fruit, whole grains, bread, and cereal. However, this iron is non-heme iron. Okay. And so it is just less bioavailable, which means available by our bodies, than heme iron. We can still use it, but it's not as efficient to uptake it. And a good portion of what we consume here will just be excreted by our body and won't be absorbed properly. And so really animal sources are the best way for our bodies to get iron. Now we can do things to help with this, and I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so absorption is hindered even further by coffee, tea, soy, wheat bran, and fiber. Okay, so if you're consuming any of these things with this non-heme iron, you've got a double dose of trouble because already it's not very bioavailable by your body, and then you hinder the absorption further by consuming it with these things. Okay. But absorption is facilitated by vitamin C. So if you dark leafy greens, they actually have a decent amount of vitamin C, so that helps with the absorption of the non-heme iron there. If you add some vitamin C, like you have beans and tomatoes together, then that helps the absorption of that non-heme iron. So there are things that you can do to help the absorption, and there's also things to avoid to that you don't want to have together to that would prevent the absorption of iron. Okay. Iodine. Iodine is needed for the production of a thyroid hormone called thyroxine, and it's really vitally important for the production of that hormone. It is mainly found in the ocean. Seafood is a good source. Seaweed or any plants that are grown in an iodine-rich soil can also be a decent source of iodine. It can also be found in smaller amounts in dairy and eggs. There's some in prunes and lima beans, but really seafood is the biggest source. And because a lot of people don't consume a lot of seafood, we find that iodine is fortified in salt, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Okay. So zinc is another trace mineral. It's needed for wound healing and our immune system. And once again, it's another one that the main high zinc foods are all animal sources. Okay. And there is some zinc in legumes, whole grains, and nuts, but the amounts are much smaller. Okay, so like here's the one vegetable source: cashews, nuts, the 2 milligrams per serving versus ground beef is 13 milligrams per serving. So you get a lot more zinc in a serving of ground beef versus nuts. Okay. I'm going to be skipping fluoride and all the other trace minerals. So you do not need to know those for the exam. Okay. Effects of processing and preservations on vitamins and minerals. So the key thing here is that the nutritive value of food, what nutrition is contained in that food, is often changed in the processing. Sometimes we remove some of the vitamins and minerals. So for example, when we make white flour, the bran, the exterior of that grain, and the germ, which is on the very interior, are removed from that whole grain. Well, that bran and germ has a lot of the vitamins and minerals that were in that wheat grain. It has iron, niacin, riboflavin, folate, and other nutrients. And all of that is taken out and is no longer present in the white flour that you have left. Okay. You can also inactivate some of your vitamins, not really minerals, but vitamins. So heating vitamin E destroys it. Okay, for example. You can also potentially improve your nutritive value. So for example, soy. Heating soy improves, number one, the digestibility of its proteins. The proteins aren't very digestible with raw soybeans. And it also increases the minerals that are available to the body. So those minerals, before it's heated, they're tied up in something else, and the body wouldn't be able to digest and absorb those minerals. But once you heat the soy, those minerals are no longer tied up with whatever they were bound with, and your body can actually utilize them. And then finally, it can reduce the bioavailability potentially of the nutrition in your foods. So for example, like I said, vitamin C makes iron more of bioavailable. But if we cook spinach, which has good amounts of vitamin C and iron, well, then we destroy a lot of the vitamin C, and that therefore reduces the bioavailability of the iron. And so we have to understand a lot of these things about processing and how they will impact the nutrition of our foods, so that we know what we're eating. Okay. And whether it's as good as what it was when it was in its original state. Okay, so a final couple notes here. Two big terms, enrichment and fortification, I want you to understand. So enrichment is the act of restoring some of the nutrients that have been removed from a product during processing. I'm using grain here, but you could use this term for other products also. So with grains, specifically, let's talk about white flour and white rice, because it's quite similar what we do to them. So both of these have a bran portion and a hull portion, okay? So there's the hull is the most exterior portion, and the bran is just inside that, okay? And for both of these, those are removed when they're being processed. Additionally, the germ is also removed in the processing of these, okay? So between the bran and the germ of both of these, when you remove them, you remove a lot of the iron and the B vitamins, several B vitamins that are part of those. And so therefore, in order to restore some of those nutrients, it's actually regulation in the US that niacin, thiamine, riboflavin, and iron are added back to them after processing. So when you buy white flour at the store, all of these have been added back to the white flour. It's enriched white flour, so that you have a nutritive value that is at least somewhat closer to what it was before you removed all of the nutrients. Okay. In addition, folic acid, which is related to folate, and your body can convert folic acid to folate, is added to rice and most grain cereal products. So that's just another B vitamin that doesn't have to, it's not necessarily always added back to flour, but other grain products it's usually added back to. Okay, so the second term, which is similar but not the same, is fortification. Okay, so enrichment was restoring something that had been removed. Fortification is just adding it. Okay, it never had it to begin with, but we're going to add it. And the reason why is to help with a nutritional deficiency that is in a population. So you want to put it in a food that that population uses a lot of, or a decent amount of, so that you can make sure that you are helping that population by adding that nutrient to their diet. One of the biggest examples is iodized salt. Okay, so like most of the salt that we consume in the US is iodized, and that's because we don't really get a lot of seafood in our diets anymore, or a lot of people don't, I should say, and so people would miss that iodine source and potentially be nutrient deficient in iodine, and so by adding it to iodized salt, that has prevented that in a big portion of the US. Also, milk has almost always has vitamin D and A added to it, and that's just recognizing that people don't get enough vitamin D, and that vitamin D is needed for calcium absorption, and so they add it to, and that's why they add it to the milk, is to help with the calcium absorption in the milk. Another example that I see a lot, and I used to actually search out was calcium added to orange juice. Also, vitamin D is often added along with the calcium to the orange juice. And the reason that they do this is, well, if people are consuming orange juice for breakfast commonly, that means they probably aren't consuming milk. I mean, they're not going to consume it at the same time, right? And in some cases, for example, like vegans, they're not consuming milk at all, and so their breakfast drink is the orange juice. And so this gives them an alternate source of um, way to get that calcium, and then of course the vitamin D. If I think this one is, yeah, this one, if you look close, it has calcium and vitamin D added to it. And so it's another way for them to get that calcium if they are not consuming dairy. Okay, and so sorry. So after that section, skipping everything else to the end of the chapter. Don't worry about anything 387 on for exam wise. All right. So let me know if you have any questions on any of this. Any questions on what you should study. I think I've tried to help you um, point you in the right direction of what's important in this. But if you have any questions on it, let me know.